Mr. Speaker, politics is full of irony, and I believe that is a vast understatement that is exhibited on this floor almost every day. But sometimes that irony bleeds over into the absurd. And that's what we're facing today when it comes to our president, who absolutely refuses to even sit down and to negotiate over the debt ceiling limit, or over the implementation of Obamacare, or over the continuing resolution, or frankly over anything else. Think about that. The President of the United States is unwilling to even sit down, to have any negotiations, to have even a conversation with the Speaker of the House. The President likes to say, "I won the election." And he likes to remind us that elections have consequences. But I would remind the President that I won my election as well. And so did 233 other House Republicans. I represent more than 700,000 people. Those 233 House Republicans represent more than 150 million people. They expect certain things of us. They expect us to represent them. They expect us to fight for those values that we promised that we would. I can't abandon those values. I owe it to my constituents. I owe it to my family. I owe it to my nation. I owe it to myself to continue to fight for those values that I think help to make this nation the great nation that it is. The President is the President of the United States. He's not just the President of the Democratic Party. He's not just the President of those states in which he won. He is the President of the United States. And he owes it to the Americans to be willing to sit down and to try to negotiate when we come into a conflict such as we have now. Yeah, we've got great challenges before us, but we can work through these. We always have before. We can find a way to work together. Republicans and Democrats have been working through their differences for generations. But we can only do that if we're willing to sit down and to talk with each other. We can only do that if we're willing to be respectful of the deeply held positions that each of us hold. We can only do that if we're willing to work together for the betterment of this nation. Which brings me to the debt limit. It is like a dark, looming cloud that hangs over us now. And we can't ignore it. We can't pretend that it doesn't matter. We can't pretend that it's not important. So like others, I would like to quote from one of the great, or who is considered one of the great political leaders of this century. And I quote now when I say, "Increasing America's debt weakens us domestically and internationally. Leadership means that the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and our grandchildren." America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better. Mr. Speaker, of course, you know I'm not quoting Ted Cruz or Mitch McConnell or the Speaker of the House. I'm quoting a young freshman senator who is now the President of the United States, who at least at one point in his career recognized the serious and the long-standing threat to this nation that our rising debt is. We have the opportunity to work together now to fix this problem. And if we can't fix it, at least we could take a meaningful step forward. I hope the President will work with us to address what he used to believe was a serious problem. But I believe it starts with one thing: sitting down together and talking to work it out. The American citizens, all of us, deserve a president who is willing to lead. The American people deserve a president who is willing to talk. Yeah, we live in a day where there are policy and political differences, but that has always been the case. From the birth of our nation, it has always been such. We are a nation where ideas and principles sometimes come into conflict. But the American people deserve a president who understands that negotiating is part of the process. And I pray that the president will sit down and talk with us now. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield.